Our Soapbox Social panel is back. It's been almost a month since we've had the two of you in studio. We're going to get to Amir and Kyla Lee in just a minute, but we had the news that broke just a couple of hours ago. The BC Conservatives have registered another new party with Elections BC, and this time for the municipal level. So far they have registered 15 municipalities, including Vancouver, Surrey, and Kelowna. And here with us in studio is our Soapbox Social panel. Kyla Lee is a Vancouver criminal lawyer for Acumen Law Corporation. Good to see you, Kyla.
Nice to see you.
And Amir is the host of the podcast. This is Van Color. Hello, Mo.
Hello, Gloria.
Let's start with you, Mo. A little over a year away from municipal elections in BC. What do you make of this? BC Conservatives registering municipal elections.
Very interesting. Remind me that I have a prediction. I have a Mystic Mo prediction ready to go. But let's talk about this first. I think there's one of two things happening. Either it's a very defensive move where the BC Conservatives are trying to protect the Conservative brand. They recently saw that Kareem Alam went out there and registered Vancouver Liberals. So maybe they're thinking like, we don't want all these random parties, using our namesake for their own benefit. Or perhaps this is an offensive move. We know that conservatism sees itself as a movement, unlike, central liberal parties. They see themselves more as a movement. So perhaps extending out into municipal politics is kind of the next phase. I do think, however, that the bandwidth will be limited for, a brand new municipal party across jurisdictions to run a full campaign. But here's where the prediction comes. I don't think they're going to run in Vancouver. I feel like the field is already quite crowded. Maybe they'll run in a place like Burnaby. I don't know. I would guess that might be one place. But I do think overall what we are going to see is a new era of municipal politics that is much more partisan, much more akin to the UK, where when you see a brand, you know exactly what it is, whether it's Conservative, Liberal, or maybe even NDP at some point. Who knows?
It is interesting news, isn't it? And Kyla, no one expected the BC Conservatives to have an impact, the impact that they did have. Do you think they could have a similar impact on municipal politics?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think that because they've now built this bigger brand in British Columbia, and because they're using that same recognizable brand to do this, I think they are going to attract a lot of attention for that. But I also think that they're doing this very strategically because it's getting potential future provincial candidates, getting their names out there, known in the community, the people who are also going to be voting for them potentially in a provincial election. And I think ultimately we're going to see a lot of people from Conservative municipal parties ultimately running down the road in provincial elections.
That's an important point, because if you look at the Vision to NDP pipeline, that definitely existed. David Eby was a Vision candidate in 2010, I believe. Nikki Sharma was a Vision candidate at one point. You had Jeff Meggs, who obviously was the chief of staff to Premier John Horgan. So this idea of creating like a farm team or a JV league for future candidates and leaders definitely makes a lot of sense to me.
Right. Okay. So Conservatives at the municipal level. We have Conservatives at the provincial level. And on the federal level, there was a decisive but expected win for Pierre Poilievre in Battle River Crowfoot earlier this week. Okay. He's back giving the press conferences. It was interesting to see one of his first press conferences right here in Surrey as well. Still, his polling numbers are still way behind Mark Carney right now. Kyla, what do you see as the challenges ahead for him?
I mean, I think repairing his reputation, especially because in that period where he didn't have a seat, he kind of became even more of a laughingstock to a lot of people. The memes were great, but I don't think it was great for him reputationally. And I think he also damaged a lot of trust with a lot of dyed-in-the-wool Conservatives when he ejected somebody who was elected out of their seat to fly in and be a candidate. Yes, he won by a landslide, but I think a lot of people didn't like it. And you saw that with the momentum that Bonnie Critchley got. So I think right now is going to be a time of rebuilding and repair. And he's doing the best thing that he can do is, taking that really attractive crime is bad narrative and doing it in the hub of where people think crime is bad in the Lower Mainland.
Well, there you go. Let's hear a little bit of that, because it was interesting that his first major stop after the by-election was in Surrey. Let's hear a little of what he had to say.
Crime, costs, immigration, housing prices are all out of control after 10 years of Liberals, and Mark Carney promised to be different. Instead, everything is worse. Our job in the fall session will be, one, to hold him accountable for the failures that are costing you more, endangering your family and weakening our country. But two, we're not just going to oppose out of control liberal crime, inflation, immigration, housing costs. We are going to propose real solutions that will mean stronger take-home pay, safer streets, secure borders, and a self-reliant Canada.
Okay, he's got the lines down. He hasn't lost that approach. I mean, Mo, what do you make of what he said and how he said it?
Yeah, I think, he's targeting Surrey because it is a seat-rich area. The BC Conservatives, the provincial party, did very well. I would say they outperformed in that area. So he's probably looking to grow his base with communities that will lean a little more socially conservative, particularly on issues like drugs, like crime, like even things like LGBTQ rights. Because at this point, he does need to get some traction, not only within his own base, but with the general public. There's two things that are going to happen now that Pierre is back in the House of Commons. The first is that he has to reintegrate into the new caucus as leader. This new caucus of Conservative MPs, we've seen them back on CBC. We've seen MPs like Aaron Gunn and Andrew Lawton really have a lot more free reign than they did in the campaign. So how are those MPs and how will the caucus feel when now Pierre is back as leader? Will Pierre continue to micromanage as he allegedly did in the past, or will he give people a little more autonomy? The second element, the external element, is that Mark Carney is quite popular. The polling is in his favor, and Pierre needs to switch the channel on that, certainly before January, before his leadership review, because if nothing changes, if they're stagnant, he's got a big issue in terms of his leadership.
Do you think he should be concerned about that leadership review?
I think he's got to work.
Yeah.
I think he's got a lot of work ahead. I don't think he's on cruise control.
Right. Well, and Kyla, is there anything to indicate you think what direction Poilievre is going to be taking the party in the coming months?
I mean, I think they're going to fall back on the standard tough on crime thing. I think that's where they score the most points. I think it's the easiest to point to. I mean, he's already blaming Mark Carney for legislation that was introduced under Trudeau as prime minister. So he's already turning the narrative the way he wants to do it. And I think this is what we're going to see for, the next several years.
Right. Yesterday on the program, we had an interesting discussion, just changing tacks a little bit here. We heard from representatives from the downtown east side, advocates there who say that they are looking ahead to next year and FIFA coming to town. And they fear that homeless people are going to be, removed from the neighborhood, just swept out of sight in preparation for World Cup. Because I guess as part of the contract, there's this, there's a 2-kilometer beautification radius around BC Place. Mo, what do you think? How justified do you think their concerns are?
Extremely justified. I mean, I would preface this by saying it's hard to comment without seeing the plan. I believe the plan is due next week on August 29th. But, we kind of have to invoke the memory of the 2010 Olympics, where there was displacement, there was a lot of evictions, and there was a loss, not addition of social housing units. Plus, we saw, a big increase of arrests for minor offenses. So the fear that the city and the province may be prioritizing the aesthetics for an international audience over the well-being of locals is, rooted in history. And then add on to that, the partner here, FIFA, doesn't have exactly a great record when it comes to human rights. Indentured servitude, labor deaths, working conditions in Qatar. I don't think FIFA is particularly credible on this issue of upholding vulnerable rights or rights for vulnerable people.
Right. Kyla, how do you see it? I mean, the city did put out a statement yesterday saying that was not the intention at all, that they would be taking great care in how they approach the issue. What kinds of concerns do you have?
Didn't they say that with every single other one of the sweeps that they've done? And we've heard from the people who were affected by it that they didn't do that. I mean, it's hard to treat them with credibility when they say that at this point, because they've proven themselves wrong so many times. I'm with Bo. I think everybody should be extremely concerned. But I do think that given that they've shown their true colors so many times on this, I think it gives the public more of an opportunity to get the outcry in place before anything even starts to happen, so that maybe they do back off. Maybe there will be enough public pressure on the city to not do sweeps as a result of this.
Yeah, I just was pulling up the statement as you were talking there. The city of Vancouver is committed to protecting and upholding human rights and has no plans to displace or relocate people experiencing homelessness due to FIFA World Cup requirements.
No plans. It's just interesting language.
Okay.
It
is. That's the statement. But you're right. We're talking about this 10 months out. We've got lots of time to explore and just see what their attack is going to be on this one. I did want to bounce something off you, and that's the Air Canada dispute. I mean, sure. Kyla, you talked about being a frequent flyer. I mean, did it affect you at all, the labor dispute?
Thankfully, with the political situation with our neighbors to the south, I haven't been flying very much, so it didn't affect me.
But what do you think? I mean, the way it unfolded, the tremendous public support for the flight attendants as well, the intervention of the government. What do we take from all of this?
I think we take that the public's definitely on the side of people who are being, to some extent, exploited for their labor. The flight attendants, in my opinion, they do a lot when people are boarding the plane and during that ground time. That's probably what they most need to be compensated for out of the work they're doing. So I think the public attitude toward it was right. I think that the government took a huge reputational hit by making that order. It's been terrible for Ms. Hadju. It's not been great. And so I think that was the wrong call for them to make.
Is it going to hurt them?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Mo, how do you see it?
Yeah, I would agree with what Kyla just said. I think there was the perception that the government, in trying to force binding arbitration, was basically siding with the big corporation. And I think when you have that element, particularly in this political environment, people get really upset. And so it was a loser for the federal government. I think they acted way too hastily. I think it's a loser for Air Canada, who will probably rely on the fact that there aren't that many choices to travel in this country. So I think they'll be okay long run. But certainly for the short term, I think everyone involved, except for the flight attendants themselves, took reputational damage on this.
Well, again, the experts, as you say, there aren't a lot of choices, so people will likely go back to Air Canada.
And who hasn't had a bad experience with Air Canada? That's the other thing. Everyone has had an experience, so it's easy to kind of dump on them.
Well, again, they haven't completely ratified the deal yet, but it is a tentative deal that's before them. But overall, I mean, do you see any impact on the overall industry possible when we talk about what was so eye-opening for so many of us? They're not getting paid while we're getting loaded into the plane. They're not actually getting paid for that?
I think that there will be an impact on the industry, and that I think a lot of airlines, to get ahead of such a terrible story about working conditions, are going to start making that standard, at least in Canada. I also think that this is ultimately going to be really good for the QP union. I mean, the sort of a little bit performative thing of ripping up the document and saying, I'll go to jail for this. I would bet that a lot of other people in unions are looking at CUPE and going, hey, maybe we should get involved here. Maybe these should be the people representing us. So I think we're going to see a lot more people going that way.
So impact on future disputes?
I'm not sure. It has an impact to me personally. I'm a high maintenance traveler. Okay. And so until the plane takes off, I am not bugging any flight attendant for anything. That's how it's impacted me. Because I was, like you just described, unaware that they were not getting paid until it's up in the air, until the plane's up in the air.
And you're saying you put your own bag up in that overhead compartment.
Yeah, I'm not asking for anything.
Amir. You squish it in there. Are you one of those people who has to squish in the oversized bag into the overhead compartment? Probably not.
I'll be putting other people's bag out. I'll be volunteering at this point.
I like that approach. Yeah. Hey, good to see you both. Welcome back. You. That's Mo, Amir, and Kyla Lee. They are our Soapbox Social panel. Mo is the host of the This Is Vancouver podcast, and Kyla is a criminal lawyer for Acumen Law Corporation.